Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long, and this is The Writing Life. And so pleased today to have my friend Emily Grosvenor with us. And I'm going to maybe embarrass her just a little bit, maybe not. And I thought, sometimes I will interview somebody I don't know, and then I do some research and try to not dig up things, but find out about their background. I didn't start out to do that with Emily because I thought I knew her. But, so here, correct me if I'm wrong, Emily is an author of the book Tessellation, editor of Oregon Home, COO of Oracle House, and I need some help with that. Chief Operating? No.
Sometimes I call it Chief Operating Oracle.
Oracle, okay. But Chief Operating Officer,
right?
Adjunct Professor of Journalism?
At Linfield.
At Linfield. And we're just getting started. Freelance editor. You've written for Good Housekeeping, Marie Claire, The Atlantic, right? Design Sponge, Salon.com, and Publishers Weekly.
That's my bio.
Yeah, that's something. Now, is this right that you received a Fulbright scholarship?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, back in 2001 I was in Germany.
I would have been so intimidated. I'm glad I didn't know that earlier when we met. I couldn't even talk to you. You're just...
Well, it was the German program. So the German program is the largest of all of the Fulbright programs because of Germany's post-war World War II ties with the United States. So there was about 200 of us.
Okay.
So much rarer is the Fulbright scholar to, say, Italy or England. But I was there for 2 years, and I studied book publishing. Germany, especially Munich, is a giant in book publishing.
Okay.
The Random House is owned by a German company. I'm not sure if you knew that, but
yeah, I think that's correct. And
right.
I'm trying to think of their name, and it escaped. What is it?
Bertelsmann.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, at the time I was really interested in going into book publishing, and I was also interested in the way they preserve literature as a cultural artifact.
Isn't that interesting with the vision that I get as the book burning?
Oh, really?
No, but you know what I mean? That they're recognized now as precious.
Yeah, I mean, Germany's made a complete 180. Like when you go to Berlin, one of the most profound places you can go to is a spot in front of the opera where they have created this work of art in the ground. There's an opening, plexiglass. You can see down into it, and it basically has the amount of shelf space you would need for all of the books that were burned in Berlin during the Third Reich.
Oh my goodness.
So you can feel that loss of cultural heritage. And Germany, because they have had to, because it was unnecessary, they've had to go through that process of coming to terms with their past. So their publishing industry is just fascinating. When you're a reader in Germany, you are generally much more familiar with the programs of different publishing houses. Like here as readers, like you and I know that Hawthorne Books, kind of does this, and Random House does this, is one of the big five. I mean, as writers, we know that. But the average reader is not paying attention to Farrar, Straus, and Giroux, and what their program is, right? Whereas in Germany, they pay, the readers are just more familiar. They identify more as a reader of that specific publisher and that specific perspective. So it's just fascinating. It's just a completely different way of having a literary life.
I was at Dachau, and I don't think I'm a particularly touchy-feely kind of person, and but there is an aura there, or a feeling that sure affected me.
Right.
Yeah. And are you bilingual?
Yes. I worked for the German embassy for a couple years after school. That was my first job.
Yeah.
It was great. It was such a fantastic time. Yeah.
Well, I hope we get to talk more about that, because I like that. Oh, and I wanted to mention too, in looking up some things, the Scent in Literature Now, and the best smelly writing, which is you. I mean, not
Yeah.
you wrote that, and then there were these little excerpts from various people. I love that.
Yeah,
That
I
was
wish
terrific.
I had time to do that, to continue that project. I mean, I could probably, it's there, I can add to it anytime, but for a while I was gathering, anytime I came across like a really interesting scent passage, and they come up.
Sure.
In good ratings, scent passages do come up. I would take a snapshot of it and try to look at what made that a good piece of writing.
Okay.
What that added to the story.
I think, and in fact, I think one of the references in an excerpt is that that scent is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's what we remember, and I think I've heard that scent is the greatest memory trigger. So,
Well,
when-
you just gotta take people there somehow in your writing.
Sure.
Like I think scent is really powerful also as a way to draw you into the moment and into right here, right now. And I think music can be just as powerful a trigger, right?
Yeah,
A way
I
to
think-
trigger memory. But with scent, it feels immediate and it feels almost subconscious because we don't pay attention to scent a lot.
That's a great point. And talk about music. If I understood this correctly, music is stored in a different part of the brain than is affected by Alzheimer's. And so people have been reached through music that was part of their childhood maybe, or part of their growing up, where other things,
Didn't
they
work.
don't respond. So this took a different turn than I was thinking, but that
I better start making my playlist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, let's talk about Terroir.
Oh,
So
Terroir.
it's coming up. This is the 11th year, and when I was thinking about how to present this, I thought, if somebody asked you who didn't know about Terroir, maybe they just heard the title, how would you describe it to them?
So what I always say is that it's this lovely, tiny little writing festival. And I used to use the word tiny, but it doesn't really work anymore because each year it has grown.
Right.
And last year we sold out for the first time before registration ended. So the word is definitely getting out that this is something to mark your calendar for.
Sure.
And we're starting to draw people from other communities in the region. Like people are starting to contact us ahead of time, and they have a little bit of anxiety when, like, did I miss it yet?
Right.
So it's what I think is important to remember about Terroir is that we live in a rural area where there's a lot of creativity going on in private spaces.
There is a lot.
And there's just not, there are opportunities, sure, to get together, but we're writers, and a lot of us are introverts, and
Right.
bringing those people together at one event, taking all of that creative energy and putting it in one room and allowing for that kind of exchange of ideas and creativity and inspiration, it can be really, really good for a writing practice. And we have people who have just started writing, who have identified as writers for their whole lives, but who just have never sat down and actually forced themselves to do it, right? And then we have people who have books out, who come and attend the festival as a participant. So it's a very wide range of people, but
Attendees.
exactly.
Right.
But we're all there because it's a sweet deal. It's a sweet deal. It's $55 for a day.
Yeah.
And you have access to this extraordinary range of literary talent through workshops and readings. And there's a lot of choice. And just within the marketplace of literary festivals, it is a sweet deal.
I think it's probably, I think it would be fair to say less than half of what most places charge.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we do that by design. I
Sure.
mean, we could easily, generally in a market of supply and demand, when we start selling out,
If you
then
sell
the
out,
idea
yeah,
is
right.
raise the prices.
Right.
But that's not the intention of this festival. I mean, this festival is put on for this community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the idea is that it remains accessible to this community.
It's the community, and I mean, we've all felt that, but Barbara Drake, I think about her particularly, that because I think she was the one who really emphasized students. Let's
Yeah.
make sure that this is accessible to students.
It'd be great, and we try to bring in the students as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to get students, when you say students, do you mean like college age students?
Well, I
or-
was thinking even younger. I think, I believe every year we've had high school students.
Right, and some high school students come, and in the past we've had scholarship programs so
Yes.
that individual teachers can bring groups of students
Right.
to the program.
Yeah.
And you know what, they bring so much. And the students, the young people who do show up they're super engaged, and they're asking questions. Like they're super into it.
It is, and I know that these are two different things, but I think that there is a connection, and that is the Paper Gardens writing contest, and we get the young people in that too. And I
Right.
just know that there's some overlap. People, young people who attend Terroir are often the people who submit work
Exactly.
to Paper Gardens, and I have to tell you. In fact, I'll broaden this out a little bit. I sometimes interview teachers who talk about poetry, as an example, in high school. And I think that my kids are so much older that I'm sort of removed from that. And it would be easy to get a perception that this has probably been going on forever, but kids don't care anymore, and they're not good students, and they're just playing video games. And then you learn that that's not true. At least it's not universally true. And it's really heartening to me at Paper Gardens, or at Terroir, and then at Paper Gardens, to see them engaged like that it is important to them, and they're pretty good.
Yeah, I can't honestly think of anything more cynical than someone making blanket statements about
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah. No, you're right,
Right.
but I'm old, and I have to catch myself and think, because the family connections that I have now are grandchildren, and they're certainly not like that. So that may even be more typical. I hope it is.
Right.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, and I want to let people know, year to year, the presentations, the balance changes a little. Maybe there's a little more poetry one year, maybe essays, maybe novel writing, something like that. What are we doing this year?
So I was taking like an aerial big picture view of this. I mean, I'm involved in helping select the people. We have a group of on the board who goes through the process of reaching out, and every year we're looking to create the right mix.
Right.
It's not a please everyone all the time, because that's impossible. It's more about giving people the full experience. So what struck me about this year's festival is how evenly it is divided between inspirational, like give you a kick in the seat of the pants creativity that's maybe more openly accessible to genres, to people
Okay.
across genres, and things that are quite specific and that might be appropriate for someone who's been in the game a little bit longer. They're both. We're serving both of those groups, which is really exciting. So they the workshops always fall along the line. Well, there's the keynote speakers, right?
Right.
We always have two keynote speakers. This year it's Renee Dunfeld and Charles Mudede. And Renee has been with us before. She's a novelist. She wrote Butterfly Girl and The Child Finder. I read The Child Finder. It's fantastic.
Okay.
I also follow her on social media, and she's just one of those like 100% mensch
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
She's just really fascinating. She was a longtime public defender. Not public defender, excuse me. She was an advocate for people in the criminal justice system
Okay.
who were on death row. And she's also a pretty big advocate for foster families. She has like 3 foster children she's been raising by herself. So she always brings it, right? And
I remember her speaking.
do you remember? Oh my gosh, so fantastic. I mean, ideally, and this is always what happens, you walk out of those keynote talks and you're like,
Yeah.
I can do it. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I should do this.
And you should do it.
Right?
I can and I should.
Exactly. And so with Renee, she's actually giving a talk on how to publish as someone who doesn't have all the connections.
Oh.
Right? Like
Which is most of us.
Right. There is a little bit, and publishing is an industry like any other, and
Sure.
and it's not so much about connections as about relationships. Like you have an easier entree
Sure.
to the system if people know you and you know them. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say about that, because her story has been really different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your typical, I lived in Brooklyn and
Right.
went to, Iowa, and that's my trajectory, right?
Right.
So I always find those stories really, really inspirational. And Charles, he's giving a completely different talk. He's talking about the effect of time and space on writing. So it's going to take like a little bit of a metaphysical turn.
Okay.
And I honestly don't know what he's going to do.
Okay.
So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And then as far as the workshops are concerned, there are quite a few that I would call out that are open to a lot of different genres. One that I'm particularly interested in is Kate Kaufman. She's actually a local writer. I think she's in Carlton. She's doing interviewing for juicy book material.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be useful for all kinds of things. Nonfiction, fiction,
Yeah.
poetry.
I think, and I would defer to her, but I think part of writing is observation.
Right.
And so an interview, you have to listen, but I think just observing people,
Right.
physical movement, dress, demeanor, that sort of thing, and then that finds its way. And I'm thinking about fiction primarily, but that works its way into your work.
Well, and Steve, you're giving a talk.
I am, yeah.
What's your talk about?
It's going to be the novel as process, and that was so meaningful to me. When I was in school, I would write poetry and short stories, and I think I felt like I could come out of the gate hard enough to get something short done. But I wanted to write a longer work, and I lost my way. And I really stopped writing for years and years because I accepted that I just wasn't that talented, that I just didn't have the gift that when I read a novel and I like it so much, and I think, oh, wouldn't that be wonderful to do that, but I just don't have it. And silly as it sounds, at some point I thought, well, wait a minute, singers take singing lessons, actors take acting classes. I wonder if I couldn't take a class. Well, and then one thing led to another, and actually that was my introduction to Elizabeth George, who is quite successful novelist, and she laid out a process. And it's not color by number, but it is a structure, and it's something it takes the place of the initial excitement because you can work through it, and that's what I want to talk to people about.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so have you found your own process through this process?
Yeah, and I think that there are sort of two basic ones, and I always say there's the pantsers,
Right.
which is Stephen King is maybe the best example of that, and the plotters, which is John Irving, is a good example. And so John Irving says the first thing he writes is the last
line.
sentence of the book, so that you have a target and you can aim at the target. Stephen King says, to him, an idea is like you're walking down the road and you look down and there's something interesting in the dirt there. You don't know what it is, but it's interesting. And then you start to dig around and expose it. And what you expose, maybe it's a short story or maybe it's a novel. And he doesn't know until he works his way down. And so that's the two approaches, or the sort of the ends of the spectrum. I think in the middle there or somewhere is a process that you adapt to fit you, which is, I think, what you're asking, and that's what I did. I took Elizabeth's process. I don't really follow it. She's more structured than I am, but it's just a way to move forward. And then when you get stuck, there's somewhere to go, rather than just throwing up your hands and saying, gee, I wish I was better.
I love structure. Like, I find that the freedom is within the structure.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, and so it's not to take away the creativity. I think
Right.
that's the thing. The freedom is the creativity, but it's a way to express that, or it's a mechanism to shape it maybe and move forward.
Right. And there's always room for art in creating new structures.
Sure.
But I mean, sometimes you just want to sit down and write a sonnet.
Yeah.
Because the sonnet has a structure, and then you're playing around within the structure.
Sure. I was at my critique group last night, and a woman brought a poem that we liked very much, but excuse me, things can be improved. And somebody broke down the structure of that, the rhyming pattern and so on, that the author didn't know she'd even done. So again, I think analysis may be almost too harsh of a word. It's like, again, color by numbers, and it's not that. But, well, you've probably heard this. My first writing teacher said, you have to learn the rules so that you know how to break them properly. But you don't know what you're breaking if you don't know what they are.
So do you have like moments that really stand out from your own experience at Terroir over the years?
Yeah, I do. There's one that I always go back to, and it's the first one with the first keynote speaker, who was Ursula Le Guin. And I remember her saying that she thinks teachers make a mistake when the kids come back from summer vacation, and a sort of a typical exercise is,
what did you do on summer
what did you do on your summer vacation? And write that down. She says, no, that's the wrong approach. The right approach is, what didn't you do on your summer vacation? And, well, I didn't go to Mars. Well, why don't you write about that? I didn't colonize a planet out there somewhere. And I just thought that opens things up.
Yeah, especially for her, I imagine, just knowing her works, that probably would have opened things really wide. I always have moments. I mean, I'm tweeting through Terroir the whole time, just trying to record for myself and share with others the kind of kick in the head takeaways that you're getting right there in that room. But I'll never forget Karen Carbo a couple years ago came down. She has since moved to France. So I'm like following her adventures as she lives in France now. But she has long been I call her my secret mentor.
Okay.
Right?
She doesn't know she is?
Well, I did finally tell her she's my secret mentor.
Yeah.
But for a long time, she was my secret mentor, and and the reason she was is because she got her start in magazine writing, and then it moved on to book writing, and she just has a really wide and expansive subject matter, and when it comes to success, there is so much advice to be a specialist, right? To focus on one area. Like,
sure.
Okay, if you're going to get a book deal, then people want you to have a next novel and a next novel and a next novel.
Right.
Right? But Karen Carbo is someone who has a voracious appetite for lots of different subjects and who can work across many different forms. And at some point she basically said that she gives herself permission to just get really into something for a season of her life, and then to let it go, and then she doesn't have to live in that world for 60 years.
Right.
So for someone like me, who's a journalist and who really, I really do live and die by that. Like I go deep,
and then move on.
and then eventually it's time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, then it's on to the next idea. That little bit of permission was so helpful.
Isn't that something?
Oh, so great.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
I think as you were talking, I was thinking about Arthur Conan Doyle, just as one example. He got so sick of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, right.
But and I think it's not then the creator, it's not the author, it's the editor, and and the marketing, and they want to sell that thing.
Of course.
And then when they can't pigeonhole you, now what do you do?
You better have the next big idea,
Yeah,
right?
the next big idea.
Right.
So before we run out of time, two things. I want to mention you host a show.
I do. I
Arts
took
Alive.
over for Linda Philippi, who for many, many years,
Yeah.
she's such an amazing supporter of the arts. So she did Arts Alive here in this very space.
Right.
And they asked me to take it over. And honestly, normally I am I'll think about it kind of person, but
Yeah.
right in that moment I said, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And,
Yeah.
it has been. So
Yeah.
I'm interviewing artists and makers and creators
Right.
of all stripe.
And isn't this a special area geographically? I
Yeah.
think, and maybe geographically is the wrong word. Culturally, we just have so many creative people from dance, film, painting, literature. It's pretty cool.
It's really important to have a way for these artists to get their stories out and for just the general viewer or reader or consumer or viewer to understand just how rich the cultural atmosphere is here.
Yeah.
You know, but people really shouldn't be stuck behind their screens watching Netflix 100% of the time. Like you'd probably have a better experience of the world if you were out there.
Well, I think so. I think
Yeah.
it works both ways. The creator, the artistic person, I think so often is they're dedicated and they're really skillful and so on. And yet I think arts, more often than not, doesn't get the acclaim that it should. And so this is one way to
Right.
help get that out there.
You know, I was watching Trevor Noah the other day,
Yeah,
The
sure.
Daily Show, and he had on I forget what the gentleman's name, and he's the painter who did the Obama portraits.
Oh, okay.
Or he didn't do Michelle's, he did Barack Obama's portrait, and I was just struck. When does that ever happen where you get an interview with a visual artist
Right.
on a major network television show? I mean, I was rapt, from the material, but also from the fact that was happening
Sure.
right there. I feel like I should also mention for Terroir, we did sell out last year before registration ended, and there were some disappointed people. So right now, registration is open. You can register right now by going to terroircreativewritingfestival.com.
Okay.
And there's a form there that you can download and mail in. In about a week, the online registration is going to be open, and you can register online. The reason we do that is we have a lot of local people on our mailing list, and it's very important that they kind of get first crack at those spots.
So, well, you anticipated me because that was my next question, or my last question, actually. But then say it again. So what's open now?
It's, you can go to the website,
The Terroir, okay.
creativewritingfestival.com.
Yeah,
You can download the form there
okay,
and then mail it in with a check.
gotcha.
Or you can wait for the online registration to open. Now,
Oh, I see,
the
okay.
AAYC members and people on the Terroir mailing list will be receiving a paper mailer
Okay.
within the next couple of days.
So really there's kind of three things. There's the Terroir site now, you can
Right.
download the application.
Yes.
If you wait, it's the Terroir site, but it's online, or the AAYC.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And the
okay.
reason we do it this way is the digital divide is real, and we just can't make it available to only people who have computers.
Sure.
You know, we have a lot of older people who come every year and who would be disappointed if they didn't have
Sure.
the opportunity, and it's just really important that you make it
And that goes back to community.
Exactly.
Because it really is for the community.
Right.
Well, we did it. That's it. Emily, thank you so much.
Thanks,
I'm
Steve.
going to watch your show too.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
When I come to your workshop.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Folks, that's it. Come to Terroir this year. It just has always been terrific. And I'm going to run over time, but I want to say the first year we did it, I think the number was like 50. We thought if we could just get 50 people, and I think that first year it was 2.5 times or something. So it has taken off from the beginning. It's been successful. There's a reason for that, and we're just so proud of it and so happy. So come on down. That's it for us on The Writing Life. My website is stephenwlong.com. Drop me a note. There's actually some work that you can read on there. And Emily, you have a website as well?
Oh, too many websites.
Okay.
So they can find me at emilygrosvenor.com.
Okay.
EMILYGROSVENOR. I'm
Okay.
also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the places.
Yeah, well, that's your world.
Right.
All right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time on The Writing Life.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys wanna do one
Yeah,
just
I
with
think
yourself
as
without
long
me
as
doing
they
the
think we're
podcast?
done, if
No,
they got
no.
enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably, okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch.
Oh.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just bite too.